voicing. Welcome back to the Speaking and Communicating podcast. I am your host, Roberta Ntlela. If you are looking to improve your communication skills, both professionally and personally, this is the podcast you should be tuning into. Communication and soft skills are crucial for your career growth and leadership development. And by the end of this episode, please log on to Apple and Spotify and leave us a rating and a review, and subscribe and like in our YouTube channel. Now let's get communicating with Conor Cunneen. Did I say that right?
You did, Conor Cunneen, that's fine. Yeah.
Conor Cunneen, yes, Conor Cunneen. Even though he has an Irish background, he is actually based in Chicago. So he calls himself Irishman Speaks. He is a keynote speaker and a humorist, right? So before we go any further, help me welcome him to the show. Hi, Conor.
Hey, greetings, everyone. Delighted to be on the show. I tell people, Roberta, that this actually is the back road into Chicago. And Illinois now is such a bankrupt state that we can't afford good roads anymore. So this is the back road into Chicago.
Back road into Chicago. So Chicago and Ireland are really that close. I like it. You can just walk down that road.
Yeah.
As I was saying earlier, it looks like in those movies when they go to Scotland or Ireland, that road would, the sheep just make everything come to a standstill and the cars can't drive.
That's right. I mean, Ireland still has a little bit of this on the west coast and certain parts of it, but it is obviously a very dynamic economy now, one of the fastest growing economies in Europe, and probably most of the high-tech companies in the world have facilities or have their European headquarters in Ireland.
Go Ireland. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, to the Shamrock. Good job. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Right. It's Conor Cunneen. The brand is Irishman Speaks. And basically what I do, Roberta, is my mission is to improve people, performance and productivity with a smile. And my objective when I'm presenting to clients is to leave them with a smile in the face, with a spring in the step, and with some memorable, actionable takeaways that will help them to keep on keeping on and achieve whatever goals the event planner or the corporation wants me to have achieved when I'm finished my presentation.
And how did you get started on this, especially with the focus on making people smile?
Well, probably the Irish have a good reputation for being happy and uplifting anyway. When I came over here to the States back in the last century, I was a VP of marketing with a large company called Unilever. And I was doing a lot of business presentations, and I realized that the Irish humor went down well with the American audiences. So stuff that I might say in Ireland that wouldn't get much of a laugh was getting a good reaction here, etc. So one of the things, that's a lesson for your listeners and viewers here, is that you need to tailor your message to your audience. And the message that might be appropriate for one audience is not always necessarily appropriate for the other audience. And as an example would be, for instance, if I was speaking to a group of East Coast salesmen selling plumbing or something like that, I might be able to get away with certain things. Now, I don't do profanities or anything like that, but I might be able to get away with saying certain things that I wouldn't necessarily be able to say to an evangelical group down in Arkansas or something like that.
In the South, yes. It's funny when you talk about, we always we always encourage our listeners to tailor make their message to their audiences. When you talk about how your humor, I remember as early teens, back in the day, the first time I saw that sitcom from Britain called Absolutely Fabulous. It was two ladies.
I remember it well, yeah.
For some reason, I didn't get that humor.
Yeah.
But if I watch an American show, I will understand every joke. So I know that sometimes culturally, some jokes land and some don't.
Yeah, most definitely. And one of the things, as a keynote speaker, I speak a lot to organizations, to healthcare, to financial professionals, etc., to leave them with that smile in the face and the spring in the step. And you really do have to be aware of the nuances of the audience, the morale of the audience, what is going well with the company, or has something gone wrong in the last week or two since you were actually booked for the event, and so you don't put your foot into it, kind of thing. And then the humor that I use, I try to generate my own humor just in general that can be generic, but then I'll always try and take some line or comment and actually purely customize it to that organization or to that client, so that it get an even bigger pop and greater laughter than if I was doing it just using my generic material.
Which brings me to the question, do you, when companies say, okay, Irishman speaks, please come to us, do you ask them about any of those, underlying issues? Do you ask them and find out what's going on, so that, because I had a guest before who does comedy for corporates. She says sometimes I make jokes about something that they are finding is challenging or is frustrating them at that moment, almost like what you just said. Do you try and find out if there's drama, if something is going on, and try to make the jokes around that?
But what I try to do is I try to understand the client, what their challenges are, the reason they're bringing me in, and what they want to do, feel, or act after I have presented. Part of the way, so I'll do good business material, but one of the vehicles I use to reinforce that is through humor. And we can talk about in a few minutes' time. I've got an acronym that spells out LAUGH, that provides 5 concepts that will help people to create humor. But definitely, if you can understand the pain points that the audience have got, you can make some comment about it. I'll give you one specific example with that.
And please share those 5 points from the word laugh.
I will indeed.
Yeah.
For an example, I was doing a couple, this would have been, or it's a good example of kind of getting the pain points across. I was doing this program a couple of years ago to a healthcare organization. They were bringing in a new piece of software, and the core software, the main software in healthcare, is called EPIC, E-P-I-C.
Okay.
And it's a pain in the proverbial trying to implement it, okay? Like every other large piece of software. And people were really getting frustrated about it in this healthcare facility. And I just made the comment to them, and I understand, I know life is really easy for you, although I do understand you do have some epic challenges at the moment. Okay, so the kind of the play on words related to the brand got a really good reaction. They realized, hey, this guy knows the frustration and some of the pain that we are going through right now. But pain points can be a major part of humor. Obviously, the pain point, you want to be careful what it is. I mean, implementing software just drives people crazy. You don't make a humorous comment about the people that were laid off last week, kind of thing. That's a different
no. We're not talking about being insensitive. No.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very good, actually, puns usually tend to have the effect of maybe, how people, if you make a pun like epic, you have epic challenges. And they go, they always have that relation of, because it's a pun. It has many different meanings in the situation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that.
Right. So back to the laugh. Please share with us those 5 tips from the word laugh.
So we'll ask you a question. This is a question I ask my audiences, and we'll see how you respond to it. So I'm looking for a 5-letter word, Roberta, all right? The 5-letter word. So, and the answer lies in from this question. So if I say something funny, what is it that I hope that you will do?
Smile.
Smile or laugh. Yeah, laugh. Okay, all right. So laugh. And I sometimes make the comment when I'm doing it to audiences, and I kind of get the comment, laugh or smile, and say a 5-letter word. Who said groan?
Oh, okay. And probably there might be people.
Yeah, I said, no, it's not groan, it's laugh. And laugh is the acronym for 5 letters, or for 5 concepts that you can implement to add humor to your presentation. And the amazing thing, Roberta, is that you don't have to be funny to be funny.
Are you sure about that, Conor?
What did he say? He said you don't have to be funny to be funny. Honestly, yes. Let me explain to you, okay? The idea behind the course I do on adding humor to your presentation is that capture the humor around you. Don't try and create humor. if you don't feel you have the ability to not create humor, just capture the humor around you. I'll give you an example.
Please do.
I've used this now in the last couple of weeks. I was speaking to a manufacturing organization, and it was in an industry where they were having some challenges with safety and with some OSHA concerns. And I said to them, look, my definition of safety is you come into work with 10 fingers and toes, and you come out, leave with 10 fingers and toes. That's not my definition. I heard it sometime, but it actually is a simple way to explain safety. So for you here as manufacturing, I'm speaking to the manufacturing audience, for you here in manufacturing, it is really critical that you are aware of your surroundings and what's going on.
Right.
A couple of weeks ago, I collected my darling granddaughter, Maggie, from soccer practice. We brought Maggie back to our car, my wife and I, and we put Maggie back into the back seat of the car. And Grammy, my wife, grandmother, sits in beside Maggie. And then I sit in beside Maggie in the back seat of the car. And a couple of seconds later, Maggie's 6-year-old brain goes, Grampy, you should be driving the car. You should be in the front. And I said, no, I want to stay here. And she's like, Grampy, as only a 6-year-old little darling granddaughter could do. So I said, okay, I'll drive the car. So I got to get out of the car. One problem. We're on child lock. Okay?
Of course, for her 6-year-old.
Of course, yeah. So I can't get out of the car. We've got to phone my daughter to come back, open the car door for us, and then I was able to get out of the car. The point of that is that for you in the manufacturing industry where safety is a concern, you need to be aware of your surroundings all of the time. And if you're not paying attention to what is happening, you can end up in trouble. Okay?
You can end up being locked in.
You can end up being locked in. So I've used that story a few times, and I mean, it's not side-splittingly funny, but it is humorous, and it is also a humorous anecdote that I didn't create, I just captured it. And the advantage of one of the things I like to try and do during my presentations as well, Roberta, is to have some callbacks and leave people with I refer to as mental triggers to remember the messages. So as we're finishing that presentation to the manufacturing organization, I said, okay, let's go back and recall a couple of things. Remember that incident I told you about Maggie and the child lock when we were stuck in the car? What are the chances of you, when you're driving home this afternoon, seeing some kid in a car seat, in the back seat of the car? When you see that kid, remember, you got to be aware of your surroundings. Some of you probably have got kids who are 3 or 4, and then you put them into the back seat. Each time you put that kid into the back seat in future, think about the fact that I've got to be aware of my surroundings, and I've got to be aware of my surroundings at work as well. So not only is that kind of an example of a good little message that I captured, but it's also an example of a message and an anecdote that can be used to recall and to generate mental triggers for the people in the audience as well.
So that they are safe by always watching their surroundings.
Absolutely. Yeah. And be aware of what their surroundings are. So what I encourage people to do is that this is my lifesaver. I'm almost, okay.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
We can see your phone now. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what I encourage people to do, Roberta, is to use a notepad or to use an iPhone or some kind of a smartphone that will allow them to be able to capture the humor all around them. And when you do that, you will have, over a period of time, a number of elements that you may be able to use sometime, somewhere, when you are actually making a presentation. And the idea behind the LAUGH acronym is that in the LAUGH acronym, the 5 concepts I speak about, and I do this in the course on adding humor to your presentation, is that LAUGH is about L is for listen.
Yeah.
And capture. Okay. So if you hear something funny, listen, capture it, put it into your iPhone, and you don't know when you're going to use it, but you might use it. If you say something funny that gets people laughing, and I bet any money you said something funny in the last 24 hours that put a smile on someone's face, you probably don't remember what it was. But if you were to once a day either see something funny, hear something funny, or make some kind of a funny comment, and you put it into your iPhone. At the end of the month, you have 29 pieces of humor because it's leap year this month, okay?
Yes.
Even better, and a month that has got 31 days, you would have 31 pieces of humor. This is mind-boggling, okay?
Very mind-boggling. It's way more than you need for one keynote. That's amazing.
It is, but the thing is, you don't know when you're going to use it or what you're going to use, but if you kind of come up with some different concept or different anecdote that you want to reinforce, look back into your iPhone or into your notepad and say, I could actually use that example there to get the message across. So the L in the LAUGH acronym is listen and record and capture. A is about, as I say, it's about antidotes and telling a good story. And what? Oh, it's not antidote, it's anecdote. Oh, yes,
anecdote.
Isn't it? Yes. I love doing this. But what I say is the antidote to a poor anecdote, the antidote to a poor speech is a good anecdote. Okay.
All right. Please say that again. That's beautiful.
The antidote to a poor speech is a good anecdote. Okay. All right. But what I was doing there was like I was just playing with words as well, antidote and anecdote. But the idea behind the LAUGH acronym, listen, A is for anecdote. And the anecdote, if you consider over the next 4 or 5 days, when you laugh or you're in a group of people that are laughing, you would probably appreciate that it wasn't a joke that primarily makes you laugh. It's either a quip or a comment or an anecdote or some little story kind of you tell around the water cooler. And the funniest anecdotes are the ones where something went wrong, but it is not kind of a life-threatening situation. So A and U is about anecdotes and that were at some stage uncomfortable, U. So the little incident there with Maggie being the back seat of the car, I mean, that was an anecdote actually happening. It was marginally uncomfortable. It was funny all of the time kind of thing, but it was a good little way to illustrate that. And if you can recall some incident from your past that you now tell your friends about where something went wrong, and they're laughing at it, say to yourself, wow, that's an anecdote. I was uncomfortable at the time. It's now a really good story. There's a message there, and it can make a real difference to your ability to connect with the audience, get them smiling, get them laughing. And again, you're not creating the humor, Roberta. You are capturing the humor. Okay? Right. So let's go. We got to listen.
Anecdote.
Uncomfortable. G is for the Googler, as I refer to it, okay? Googling on the Bing, all right? I like to say you Google on the Bing. Right. So the basic idea here is that if you're doing a presentation on, let's say, leadership, all right?
Right.
What I would suggest you do if you're looking for some inspiration, and let me just put it back here for a second. If you're doing a keynote speech or a presentation, all you really need to do is to get them smiling or laughing 3 or 4 times in a 30-minute pitch or presentation. And they will think, hey, that person is a humorous presenter. They've got good concepts as well. That's obviously critically important. But we're not talking about writing comedy here. We're not talking about getting the reaction you want to get if you go to a comedy club. We're talking about adding humor to your presentation to reinforce the presentation. So if 3 or 4 times in your presentation, you can come up with an anecdote or you Google on the Bing, as I say, and you find something, let's say, on leadership. So you can ask for things like humorous quotes about leadership.
Yeah.
Funny leadership anecdotes or humorous jokes about the leadership, etc. And then what you can do is you can somehow or another drop that in appropriately. You can say, you're not plagiarizing anything. You can say, I saw on the, let's say, MSNBC or a Fox News the other day a reference to XYZ that is actually humorous. Someone's making a comment kind of thing. Or I saw a joke online that reinforces what I'm talking about here kind of thing. So there's no danger of stealing a comics material. I'm not suggesting that at all.
No, we won't encourage that. Yeah.
But if you Google on the Bing for your topic and add a humorous anecdote after it, or if you Google on the Bing for, let's say, lawyer jokes, financial services jokes, doctor jokes, etc. Those kind of things. You would be able to come up with something, and then you would be able to adapt it a little bit to your audience, possibly, and use it to reinforce your message. So, and then the final element of the laugh acronym. So we got listen,
anecdote,
uncomfortable, Google and the Bing, or you can even Google and the AI now, I suppose, or AI and the Google. I'm not sure what it is.
Googleable or ChatGPTable.
That's right. Yeah. So the final one is H, and H is for he to ho. So he to ho. And the idea here is that if you're doing a presentation or you're making a comment to someone and you get a smile or you get a little chuckle from that person or that audience, ask yourself, is there some way I can actually enhance that? So instead of the next time I'm speaking and presenting, it won't just be a he, it'll be a ho. Because what you have got there when you got the he, Roberta, is you've got a little, I suppose you can call it an acorn, and from little acorns, so giant trees grow if you kind of fertilize them and give them the air and the resources to make it happen. It's the same with your presentations. And if you are doing if you're a keynote speaker, for instance, I mean, I speak to a lot of different groups, and a lot of the material I do, my core keynote is titled actually the Gift of Gab, GAB, and Gab is an acronym for goals, attitude, behavior. Goals, attitude, behavior. Okay, so I can do a program on successful leadership through the Gift of Gab, goals, attitude, behavior. I can do teamwork through the Gift of Gab, goals, attitude, behavior, etc. And all for different audiences and with slightly different nuances. So a lot of the material that I will be using is material that I used last week and the week before that I know is going to get a laugh. Okay,
it's been tested out.
It's been tested out, yeah, and that is important in that sometimes then I'll give a quip that will get a good reaction, but because I'm not expecting the reaction, I kind of stamp on it a little bit. But what I do remember is, hey, remember, Conor, you got a good reaction to that. How can we just make it pop a little bit more? So one of the things that's important when you're communicating with your audience is make sure you give them time to take your message in. And when it comes to humor, if you think you've got something humorous to say, allow them to laugh as well when you have made that comment. Because if you stamp on their laughter, you won't get them laughing the next time as much as if you didn't stamp on their laughter, kind of thing.
Right. And when that's why when you said ho, I thought he's saying you become Santa, you make them so happy.
Yeah.
Put such a huge smile on their face, they go ho.
Right, yeah. But it's a simple concept though. I mean, and the thing is, again, you don't have to be funny, but almost certainly you have said something, and I'm not saying you're not funny, by the way. You have said something in the last few days that put a smile on someone's face. If you start paying attention to that, you can just maybe throw one extra word in or take one word out of that sentence and it's going to pop. Okay?
Right. Here's what I've noticed, and you can correct me on this, Conor. When you realized that you had the child lock and you couldn't get out of the car, does personality play a role in the sense that if you are the type of person in general who does find the irony or the humor in uncomfortable situations, you are likely to do what you just said versus someone who always, if something goes wrong, they just lose it.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not a saint. I know just above here, you can't see it above the screen, but there is actually a halo above my head, okay? As I tell my wife, all right? She doesn't see it either, Roberta. I don't get this. But I'm not a saint either, and I do get annoyed and frustrated as well. But the point about that story is that when my daughter comes back to open the door, she's already breaking her side laughing. And then we tell it to my brother in New York, and he's breaking his side laughing about it. So even if I had been frustrated, I think other people involved would have seen the humor in it. And then you got to say to yourself, all right, that's a humorous little anecdote. I can use it. If you are any average person, I think, will be able to find humor in certain things that happen. And there's a big difference now between something going badly wrong and something that's
not extreme situations.
Yeah.
As you said, your daughter was laughing, which helped the rest of you. As you said, watch your surroundings. So you might be frustrated, but if everybody around you starts laughing, have you realized it becomes contagious? And then you think, maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was.
And here's the other interesting thing about I really work hard on developing good content. I research it well. I think I present it well. I rehearse it a lot of the time. I'm involved with a Windy City professional Toastmasters, professional speakers Toastmasters group here in Chicago. And we can kind of present our material there for 15, 20 minutes and then get roasted by the rest of the group, which is really good. But if you want to get good at something, you got to make an effort to get good at that thing. And I'll give you an illustration of that now in a second if we've got the time. So if, for instance, anyone here is watching who wants to win a humorous speech competition in Toastmasters, what I suggest to you is if the competition is on next May, June, or probably be maybe September, October this year, maybe. If the competition is on next September, October, start preparing for it now. And the way you prepare for it now is you get out
collect your we usually say story bank, but this is a humor bank.
A humor bank, that's it, And the idea is you're just building up the material and you'll be able to use something sometime, somewhere, etc. But if you think you've got the first round of the humor speech competition coming up in 2 weeks' time, and you're starting to write a speech now that you think is going to win it, good luck to you.
Yeah, no, you need to be prepared well in advance. Yeah.
And the other thing I would say about writing a humorous speech is that here's the paradox, don't initially try and write a humorous speech. Write the speech, then figure out how you can add humor to it. It takes some of the pressure off you. And the more you kind of go back over that speech as a Toastmaster and you're ready for your 5 to 7 minute speech, I think if you keep going over, you'll find, hey, there's another word I can put in there. I remember now there's something else that happened to me 4 weeks ago. Maybe I can drop that in, etc. But it takes time to develop material that will impact people, whether it's serious material or whether it is humorous material with a serious message, or it's just humorous material. It don't happen overnight.
You said at the beginning, actually, that at the end of the day, the humor is tailor-made to the topic, because the topic is what's important. The content is the significant part of this. The humor adds to the presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're doing a humor speech competition, all right, you don't necessarily need to have a lot of content in that. But for me, as a keynote speaker, I'll be doing 45, 55, 60-minute presentations to leaders, to engineers, financial services, healthcare professionals, oncology, etc. They want good messaging around the gift of gab, for instance, goals, attitude, behavior, that they can take back to the workplace. But one of the vehicles to grease the axle, if we can call it that, to help the reinforcement of the messaging is by adding humor to the presentation. And if you make a commitment, I actually say when I'm doing the course on adding humor to your presentation, if you make yourself a commitment that I will make an effort to add humor to my presentation, it will start happening after a while. It mightn't happen tomorrow, it mightn't happen the day after, but if you go to the gym, you ain't going to get buffed overnight. It's going to take a period.
Wouldn't we love that?
Yeah, absolutely. Humor is the same kind of thing. And I tell a story to reinforce some of these comments. Well, actually, I use this story to reinforce my material, whether it's humor or not, that I'm trying to get across. But I say to people, things don't happen just because you want them to happen. You got to make an effort to make them happen. And I'll tell you a story about Patrick, who was a good living Irish guy. And Patrick went into some financial difficulties due to gambling, women, and drinking. All right, Roberta. So the Irish definition of good living is pretty broad. All right. So Patrick's granddad dies. Patrick goes out to the house to clean out the house, and then he goes out to the garage, and he's brushing against cleaning out the garage. He brushes against the lamp, and out of the lamp pops
a genie?
No, a leprechaun.
Oh yeah, by the way, Irish. That's right.
Leprechaun. Okay. Everyone says genie. I say leprechaun because of my background kind of thing, and it gets a really
Irish.
good reaction. So the leprechaun says, and here's an example now, by the way, of tailoring your message. The leprechaun says, Patrick, I'll give you one wish. And Patrick says, leprechaun, I thought you gave 3 wishes. And the leprechaun says, hey, Patrick, it's still post-COVID supply chain problems. We can only provide you with 1 wish. Okay? Right. So the leprechaun says, what wish do you want? And Patrick says, leprechaun, if you let me win the lottery, I'll pay off all of my debts. I'll give the rest of it away to charity. I don't need the money. And I'll stop being drinking and womanizing and gambling. The leprechaun says, hey, I like that. It shows nice goals. I like your attitude. Shows nice behavior. Gift of gab. Okay? Right. So the leprechaun says, I'll let you win the lottery. 1 week goes by, Roberta, and Patrick does not win the lottery. And 2 weeks go by, and he still hasn't won the lottery. And after week 3, and Patrick not winning the lottery again, he goes out to the garage, he brushes against the lamp, and out of the lamp pops the
leprechaun is in deep trouble.
Yay! See, leprechaun learning audience. I love it. And the leprechaun says, Patrick, what can I do for you now? And Patrick says, leprechaun, you told me I'd win the lottery, and I haven't. And the leprechaun says, Patrick, give me some help here. At least buy a lottery
ticket.
Yeah. No, that's a goofball story. It's an old story. But for you in my audience, it is a story with a moral. And the moral is that just because you want something to happen doesn't mean it's going to happen. And you have got to make an effort to be able to do X, Y, or Z, whatever we're talking about in whoever the audience is. But for you, if you want to add humor to your presentation, you've got to make an effort to do it. You've got to commit to doing it. You should pay attention to the LAUGH acronym and the LAUGH concept. Have a notepad or have an iPhone or whatever it is that will help you to create it. And eventually you will win that lottery because you made the effort to go for that metaphorical lottery ticket. And
it won't be the leprechaun's fault for sure. Thank you so much. Irishman Speaks, real name Conor Cunneen. All the way from Chicago. Cunneen,
you got it. Remember,
yeah.
Just Irishman Speaks. Oh, gosh, Lord,
Irishman
it's
Speaks.
That side, isn't it?
That, don't worry about it. Yeah. Irishman Speaks. Thank you so much, Conor. Not only did you help us add humor, but it's so much fun. And we laughed during our conversation. I really appreciate you. But before you go, please share with us where we can find you for more humorous tips.
Well, if you come walking the land here in the morning, you'll find me walking the road. But otherwise, the brand is Irishman Speaks. My website is Irishman Speaks. I've got a course on there on adding humor to your presentation. I'm also on YouTube. And as I say, Roberta, when it comes to being a professional speaker, search engine optimization is important for me. YouTube is important. And I want to be all over the web like a rash. In the sense that
I asked the leprechaun for that wish. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I want people to be able to find me. So Irishman Speaks, and I really enjoy the conversation. Really good fun. Thank you for having me. I also had fun. I appreciate you being here today. Thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify, and stay tuned for more episodes to come.